Are you tired of having to decide what's best to focus on to sharpen your skill set? Does the saturated market for informative books or the endless stream of YouTube tutorials leave you overwhelmed and concerned you might end up wasting your time working on the wrong thing? Do you have a gnawing insecurity about what level you're at in the skill you so desperately want to improve? Perhaps you've read the stories of your idols finding their own unique voices through an entirely unique set of circumstances and convergences of fate that found them in the right place at the right time with the right people for them to emulate and hone their craft in a way you wouldn't have the slightest chance of being able to recreate. If you've said yes to any of the above, have you considered studying classical piano? It's not easy.
Nope!
But what you need to focus on couldn't be more crystal clear. 12 grades in all. It's just like school.
So, once upon a time, I went to music school, and I graduated. It's not something I like to talk about that much. You can call it some kind of rock star fixation with feeling like you're supposed to be self-taught. So for me to go from still having that kind of lingering assumption to deciding to get on board with Canada's oldest musical academy institution would have been unlikely, say, more than a couple of years ago. For those who don't know, the RCM is an institution that's been around since the 1880s, started in Toronto. It became a company under Royal Charter, and ever since then it's been providing structure to young people's lives. It goes all the way from preparatory to what they call ARCT, which is their graduate level. You got kids probably anywhere from the age of, say, like 3 taking this stuff. When I was a kid, I did not have the focus or overbearing parents that forced me to do it. But now looking at it, there's a whole different reason that I like this kind of thing. I was inspired by one of my colleagues who had gone back and done his conservatory training, that maybe it'd be a good idea for me, both in order to sort of like a professional development thing. It was also a skill that I wanted to hone in the first place. I'd always wanted to be a more competent piano player, and I definitely still do. I went to music school for the bass, which I still love the instrument, but I don't really think it's my soulmate. I don't know if I have like a musical instrument soulmate or not. One of the consequences of doing this stuff that I found to be really helpful had to do with something that I wasn't even expecting, and that was the rigidity of the grading curriculum. I don't wholeheartedly buy into the belief that I'm doing grade 7, for example, and I don't wholeheartedly believe that you learn these steps and the grade 7, and you are a grade 7, you know this piece, therefore you are grade 7. It's a bit fictitious, it's arbitrary. But a lot of my experience had been that one's own sound can only come from the metaphysical ooze, the ether, that mysterious voodoo. You know, take whatever mojo myth you've heard about the blues man. Of course, you've got the classic Robert Johnson selling his soul to the devil. You know, he wasn't showing up at a music academy. You had jazz players like, you know, Lester Young or Louis Armstrong, who just kind of learned by hanging out in clubs, even Charlie Parker. So, although I did receive post-secondary education in music, there was a certain push even then, because it was jazz-based, to develop one's own sound, and therefore you were kind of left and cut adrift to figure it out as you went along. Nobody likes to admit that they had real set schedules. When I started doing the Conservatory Method, I was pleasantly surprised at the joy of structure. The joy of knowing exactly what I have to learn. Okay, so you want to be grade 7? All right, here's 12 things that you need to do. And you need to learn these pieces in the classical format. I'm not asking you to solo. The practice is methodical. Everything's numerical. Everything is laid out in terms of the numbers, in terms of beats per minute, suggested tempos, things like that. It was very refreshing to be able to cut off that part of one's brain and not have to overthink, if you are this type of person, overthink whether what I am doing the right thing to do for me right now. It's laid out for you from the start. So with that taken off your mind, if you can accept the fact that you're gonna follow a rubric like a sheep, if you can stomach that, which was super easy for me to do. Here's my theory, you do all this work on these things that other people tell you should do. And then you wake up one day and you realize that when you're playing your own shit, when you're playing whatever you really want to do, self-expression, soloing, writing, whatever, all of a sudden you have the facility to do that because you went and you played this Bach fugue, family fugue. Then you can break it down, and this is kind of what I do with practice time. Numbers are extremely helpful with practice. Numbers are extremely helpful with goal setting also. So Conservatory Method has a ton of those. So you start at 40, and then maybe the next day you go to 42, and then 44, and these goals are very specific and graduated. The same thing for the actual repertoire, which is the other side. Basic things for an RCM test, which is the goal at the end of any level of preparation. The things which you have to work on are 3 pieces of repertoire, 2 etudes, and technical tests, which include scales, arpeggios, a whole heck of a lot of different scales and arpeggios though. You start at a super slow pace, get real familiar with 50 beats per minute, 60 beats per minute, be happy at that speed, and just gradually ratchet it up. It's a method that works. I'm just happy to be able to play this stuff, and then eventually down the line, I can adapt it. You don't let the system control you. You realize you're dropping in. You're dropping into this system for a particular purpose. In my case, it's gaining technical facility and perhaps developing a marketable skill. And then you can step out when you got what you need and do your own thing with it. And you get the sense of achievement at the end of it. Once you've successfully completed a level, you've climbed, metaphorically, up another level. That is something that is very much missing when you have the self-made version, the mojo version of this, where you're sort of hacking away. If you're doing the self-taught mojo way, at the crossroads way of doing things, then you don't have the benefit of that pat on the back. Now, is that just a vanity thing? It could be. The humans have a thing for progress, right? So you recognize the transparency of that world of levels, because you don't want to just parrot. Even if you were a concert pianist, you wouldn't want to just parrot others' material. You want to have some kind of personal stamp that you put on it. So even people who follow this stuff to the letter, the ones that go somewhere with it are the ones that manage to not let it be them. It's an element of them. And that's what I'm attempting to do by following this stuff.